Welcome to the AI Applications Podcast, where we talk to the people who are building applications based on AI. I'm your host, Greg Helmstetter. My guest today is Vincent Serpico, owner of Founders Workshop, a product development shop that helps visionaries create their MVP, and they help SMBs update their legacy code. They also provide staff augmentation for clients that are more hands-on. Good afternoon, Vincent. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Greg.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background? How did you get into software development?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I actually started software development when I was 14 years old, and I was in ninth grade, and the Commodore 64 came out. I asked my dad if he would get me one, and he did. And I, after school and on weekends, I read the entire manual on how to code in BASIC. Back in those days, you had literally line numbers, 10, 20, 30, 40, stuff like that. And I taught myself how to code in BASIC and created myself a little video game. And that was my foray into coding. Professionally, I started coding I started professionally in 1999. I actually had a completely different career before this, so I had a little break. And I started out as a developer, worked my way up to CTO, all that kind of fun, great stuff. And then I started Founders Workshop 15 years ago to help entrepreneurs and SMBs and other visionaries build software applications.
I see that your company's tagline is if you can dream it, we can build it. I really love that. I admit I have way more ideas than I can build, so maybe you could build some of my ideas for me. What
Yeah.
exactly does Founders Workshop do, and how did it get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have always had a soft spot for entrepreneurs. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm also a very active angel investor, so I invest in entrepreneurs. My father and grandfather were both entrepreneurs. I worked in the family business for a while. And what I noticed about 15 years ago was that entrepreneurs did not have a really good resource to go to build out their application. Back in those days, it was mostly web apps. Today, we still do web apps, but mostly mobile apps. They didn't have really good resources. They had to go to a large company that didn't understand entrepreneurship, or some guy's cousin on the weekend who would not really do the best of jobs. So my mission was to work specifically with entrepreneurs, startups, and owners of small businesses where my passion lies. And what we do at Founders Workshop is you'll come to us with an idea, and we'll do an in-depth discovery session. It'll last a few weeks where we'll get to know everything about your idea, who you are, what your short-term and long-term goals are, etc. We could also help you with with planning. We can help you with product market fit. We can help you with high-level marketing strategies. So we help with the entire product life cycle, not just software. But software is our bread and butter.
Would you say you sort of specialize in helping the founders that don't have a technical co-founder, or do you find yourselves that you augment the case where they do have a technical co-founder? So maybe you got a business person and someone who can actually build something. Which one of those is kind of your sweet spot?
Yeah, so for those who don't have a technical co-founder, we provide full service software development. We provide a product owner, a project manager, needless to say, developers, testers, designers, and UX. For those who do have a technical co-founder or know how to really run a dev team, it takes a lot to run a dev team, then we do either partial staff augmentation or full staff augmentation. Full staff aug is when you might say to me, look, I need one Node.js developer. I know what to do with him. Just give me a Node.js developer. And partial staff aug is when you might say, look, I know I need these couple of people, but I need a project coordinator to help me relay my ideas. So we're pretty flexible depending on where the entrepreneur is in his journey and his skill sets.
So speaking of the journey, if they're very early stage and say like pre-funding, is there any way you work with those people or do they need to be funded first typically? How does that usually work?
So we have worked with companies that are fully funded, but the vast majority of the entrepreneurs we work with are bootstrapped. There are folks who have taken a second mortgage on their house, or have dipped into their life savings, or have taken out their 401k, and that's important. It really is. As an angel investor, I'll switch hats a little bit. As an angel investor, when someone comes to raise money, the first question I ask is, how much have you put in? Did you mortgage your house? Did you go through your life savings? I'm not looking for somebody to be destitute and worry where the next meal is coming from, but I'd like to see somebody, put in significant skin in the game. Look, if you want me to believe in your idea and you want me to put my hard-earned money in, I want to see you put your hard-earned money in. And that's what these people are doing. They believe in their idea and they come to us. And, sometimes when somebody comes to us and says, I've got my life savings and I want to build this app, and we look at it and we say, maybe this is not such a great idea. We'll let you know right out. I would much rather say to somebody, I think you should do a product market fit analysis first, because I don't know if this app is really going to take off before taking their money. So that's a big thing. We have turned business away or dissuaded folks from moving forward because above all, we believe in the entrepreneur and want to see the entrepreneur succeed.
You as an angel investor, does that usually take the form of Founders Workshop doing work for equity, or is that usually a cash injection and it's separate from the work you do at Founders Workshop?
So out of the 200 plus founders we've worked with over the past 15 years, I've invested in two of them. So it's rare, it's slightly less than 1%. And both of those were at a point where they already had traction. One of them raised a couple of million already, and the other one had significant traction and also raised a few million. So my angel investing thesis is I want to see traction before I invest. The best traction is that somebody has opened their wallet and parted it with their hard-earned cash to pay for your product. The next form of traction is, all right, nobody's paying for it yet, but there are a lot of people using it. And then the third form of traction, which is the third tier down, is that people aren't using it that much, and they haven't paid for it. However, there are a lot of people requesting that you change the features because they see the value in it. So those are the three orders of traction. But generally, no, I try to keep it separate. Founders Workshop is an income stream, and my angel investing is something different.
I see that you do a lot of speaking about artificial intelligence. In fact, a friend of mine first told me about you, and I went and watched some of your talks on YouTube, and I was really impressed. You don't usually see this type of knowledge and experience with AI. With like there's a lot of shops out there that do web development and app development for companies and like that. And I know a lot of them don't have a lot of knowledge yet, or they're gaining it about artificial intelligence. How did you learn about AI, and what is your experience with it?
Yeah, sure. So I taught myself AI about maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and back then when I taught myself AI, yeah, of course there were neural nets and all of that, but the predominant form of AI that everybody was using was classical machine learning.
Hmm.
And classical machine learning is essentially mathematical formulas and algorithms that are applied to large data sets in order to see patterns. Some of these formulas are literally hundreds of years old. Like Bayes' algorithm, I think is 250 years old, but you can apply it to data sets for machine learning.
Gradient descent
Um,
and backpropagation as well. Yes, with just it's
exactly.
calculus.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Linear regression, all of that. We all took linear regression in college. We
Hmm.
remember it. We all learned about it rather. And then, when ChatGPT 3.5 came out and I started playing with this, I said to myself, this is literally going to change everything. When I say everything, what I'm talking about is everything. So I've been coding since I was 14 years old, like I told you. I have never seen anything like this in my life. Look, ChatGPT reached 100 million users in 2 months. It took TikTok 9 months to reach 100 million users, and that was the fastest growing app until ChatGPT came along. And the reason why everybody who got on early and understands the value of it is because for the first time ever, what's happening is that we have created an AI that is cracking the pattern of language. And that is just so incredibly powerful. What do we use language for, Greg? Everything, right? We use language to build civilizations, to pass down history. Language is what you hear
We
all
we
day long
think
in that
we think in
internal
language.
dialogue. What?
We think in language.
We think in language. And to think that we actually have a machine that can see patterns in language and in some cases better than us, what can you do with ChatGPT? What can you do with language?
When I first started studying, well, it's interesting. Much like you, my first foray into AI was traditional machine learning in 2017. I was playing with Microsoft Azure, doing some simple regression models, just tutorial kind of stuff. I didn't do it as a practitioner, and had worked with linear regression just as a user, not as like any kind of technologist, way back in grad school, in the 90s. But it wasn't really until LLMs came out, and this kind of I admit I like to keep an eye on what's happening in technology and stuff like that. And I have to admit I sort of let my eye off the ball. I wasn't like reading the papers in natural language processing, and so I had some catch up to do. I was like, how do these things work? I have an undergraduate degree in psychology, and I almost pursued a PhD in cognitive science at UCSD, except I got accepted into business school instead. So, I mean, I've sort of had a fascination with how the brain works and all this stuff. Even neural nets back in a in the 80s, in my psych department at Arizona State, we were talking about neural nets. And of course, I think they had like 10 neurons or something like that, and they couldn't really do very much. Anyway, so when LLMs quote unquote burst on the scene, I had not been aware of them at like 2.0 and 3.0. Like many people, I became aware of them with 3.5. And I instantly, like you, this was clearly, I mean, I was thinking, okay, this is going to change like everything, like more than the web, more than social, more than mobile, more than the computer. And I'm thinking like, okay, maybe not as much as fire in the wheel, but like maybe as much as electricity. Like that's where I'm sort of, comparing this kind of technological revolution because of just the number of things that it potentially impacts and enables. Anyway, when I started learning about the concept you were alluding to, that words can be converted into numbers, okay, fine, in such a way that they retain their semantic relationships to each other, I was like, "What?" Mind blown. And kind of, a lot of people who take the classes and stuff, they're familiar with this example. So you go for listeners who aren't aware, you take a whole bunch of text, you feed it through this algorithm, usually called Word2Vec, and there's others, but that's the one I think probably most people are using today, and it converts it into long lists of numbers, and that's sort of in a multidimensional space, which is kind of hard to get your head around initially. And the distances, it's really has to do like with the angles between these numbers in this space kind of relates to how closely they relate to one another. And it's all very abstract until you give an example. And the example that blew my mind was that if you take the vector embedding, which is just a number, it's a list of numbers for the word king, okay? And then if you subtract the numbers for the word man, and then add the numbers for the word woman, you'll end up with a list of numbers. And if you go the other direction and say, what do those numbers equal? And you go look it up, my mind is blown. It's the word queen. Okay, so king minus man plus woman equals queen, and the math works. And if that doesn't blow your mind, then I haven't explained it well enough because it should blow everyone's mind. And you can extrapolate that to all the nuance in languages, all patterns we see. Pictures, okay? So if you have a picture of a king, and you got enough data fed into this algorithm, that picture of the king will be close to the vector embedding of the word king. So semantics actually connect to pictures and concepts in the real. Anyway, sorry to go on this tangent, but I can hear your excitement and passion about it. And I just wanted to share with people like who haven't looked kind of underneath the hood on this stuff. There's a reason that everyone's like, "Wow, this is new, nothing like we've seen before." Did you have a similar sort of epiphany?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Greg. I mean, look, you nailed it. That's exactly it. Where as you know, neural nets can see patterns in whatever symbolic set you give it, and when the symbolic set happens to be language, converted to numbers and vectors, and you understand the potential of it, you're nothing short than awed. And by the way, just to go down memory lane a little bit, I do remember using Azure in 2017. I loved it. It was it was my go-to for when we did AI projects at Founders Workshop. We did machine learning projects back then, and it was my go-to, and I loved it. Microsoft hit the ball out of the park with Azure, as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed. So, okay, so you were learning about LLMs, and now there's quite a jump from there to the point of learning how to like do fine tuning or RAG applications, or certainly anything, LangChain and sort of agent systems kind of more advanced and cutting edge like that. So, how did you go about, from a practitioner standpoint, actually building applications? I mean, I get, before you answer that, let's take a step back. I was wondering, what sort of interest are you seeing among your clients for AI applications? Are they looking for machine learning stuff? Want to, identify this flower kind of stuff that we've had for quite a while now, or are they, fully into large language model and are API based, or what kind of stuff are you doing in the AI area today?
Yeah, so our clients, the ones that are the more visionary, the ones they're seeing an integration of large language models in their base operations. So I advise anybody who owns a business and is listening, don't look for like this big monumental idea that you think is going to change the world in AI. Start with your operations. Just look at your base operations. Look at your support. Look at your coding. Look at just whatever your operations happens to be, end to end. And I'm almost guaranteed that you can fit AI in there. Most likely, large language models in most of the areas, but other RPAs or things like that. Like for instance, just one very simple one. Let's say you own a business that has a lot of Google reviews. I mean, tons of Google reviews, right? Well, if you're getting a lot of Google reviews, you have a couple of options. Option number one is don't reply to them because you don't have enough time. Option number two is to reply to them exactly the same way. Thanks for your support. Hope to see you again, which we see a lot of people do. But, there's a third way of replying to it, and that's to use a large language model. You can create a workflow. You can just do it in Zapier if you want. You can create a workflow where a review will come in. You have a large language model write the review. You can have a second large language model check the review to make sure it looks good, and then you can post it. And every single one will be unique, and every single one will sound really good. And right there and then, you decrease the amount of time you need to dedicate to doing that. And just as important is everybody's getting a unique reply. So, that's just one example of something that you can do right now to increase efficiency and make your customers happier. You look at Clarion, I believe they're called Clarion, the Swedish buy now pay later company. They recently replaced 700 employees with chatbots, of their support staff. And not only
Klarna,
are they
correct?
saving all that money, but the average support time went from 7 minutes to 1 minute, and the satisfaction of their customers skyrocketed because the AI was able to answer the questions so much better. And we're just at the very, very, very beginning of it. There are three main areas that large language models can help out with right now in businesses. When I say three main areas, I mean three main areas, but there's hundreds of other other areas too. The three main areas is support. Okay, that's number one. It's tremendously helps out in support. Answer your calls, be a chat bot, help your human with support. But support is a huge one. Number two is coding. If you have not used Cursor to code, you're missing out. It is like it's just like I can't get over it. I'm like I don't code anymore. I have conversations with large language models. It's the strangest thing. And then data analysis. Okay, so you can use your large language model to do data analysis. Those are the three areas right now that are just absolutely killing it. So think about that in your business when you start to think about how to implement in AI or large language models into your business. There's many other areas too, many other areas, but those are three main ones that I want you to start thinking about if you own a business and you're listening.
I saw in one of your talks you had this really great, or maybe it was on a PowerPoint slide, something. You had this long list of every use case that you had compiled for LLMs, and it was like better than anyone I had ever seen. We're all familiar with the usual suspects, such as customer service chatbots or HR doing their new employee onboarding and so on like that. But yours, I think, I don't know, how many was it? 50 or 100, something like that. I just
There were a lot. I can't remember all of them right now.
You must just, I mean, I don't know, did you see that somewhere? You just must keep a running list, and every time you see a new one, you like jot it down, I think, because it's quite exhaustive and impressive.
Again, my job with AI is just it's over encompassing because I work with wide variety of businesses. So I need to understand not only how AI works from a technological point of view, but I need to understand how it's currently being applied now, how it can be applied in the coming months, because months is like years in AI, and how it will be applied in the coming years. So I need to understand it from both sides. So I'm just diving into it from every single angle. So again, if you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, talk to me and let's see how we can integrate AI to 10x your efficiency.
I will put a link to that presentation in the show notes so that people can see that list. And are there any, I know you oftentimes have to maintain confidentiality with your clients' projects. Are there any specific projects you can tell us about or maybe anonymize
Yeah,
them?
I can tell you one that's really unique. So there is the European Accessibility Act says that by June 2025, every ebook sold in the European Union must have alt tags in the pictures. Okay. There's three layers of alt tags. The first layer might be, a picture of a slice of pizza. The second layer might be a picture of a pepperoni pizza on a plate, and the third one might be, just very very long, right? Most ebooks are not in compliance, so there is an army of Indian and Filipino editors out there trying to update these books. It takes a long time, it's expensive, and they make mistakes. So his idea was to go ahead and ingest thousands of these books at once, use computer vision to look at the image, then use a large language model to create all three layers of the alt tag, and then use an agent to go ahead and wrap it back up in HTML and get the book ready for publication. That will increase efficiency by 100x. And the 100x is actually not outlandish. If there was a report that came out from Walmart about a month and a half ago, which is Walmart implemented AI in three main areas over the last several years. And they said they had an increase of 99% efficiency, which means that 99% of the people that they typically employ were just not needed anymore.
The pace of AI, of course, is just insane. It's like drinking from a fire hose if you try to keep up with it. And that's just the new models coming out, to say nothing of the tooling and the legal environment, the regulatory frameworks, and all this kind of stuff. And Sam Altman, boardroom Taylor Swift and Scarlett Johansson shenanigans. It's just like this is hidden culture in all these different ways. Just on the technology side alone, how do you keep up with it, and how do you keep your team up to date on the technology?
So, AI is blowing away Moore's law, okay, by a minimum factor of 10x. I mean, there's new stuff coming out almost daily right now. When it came to, pre large language models, I was able to keep up with technology really easily, just throughout my daily life because change didn't happen that fast. With large language models and generative AI in general, it is moving, like I said, 10x faster than Moore's law. So the bottom line is, if you want to keep up, you got to put the time in. And I do spend hours every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, reading articles, doing coding, whatever I got to do. So I spend literally every single day of my life on this. So I'm sorry, but I wish it was an answer where I can say you can listen to just one podcast 30 minutes a day and you'll be okay. But even Kevin Scott said that he can't keep up with it. And somebody like him who has basically, all the resources that I wish I had, he can't keep up with it. A guy like me, I have to spend several hours a day on it. So
Yeah, that's the CTO of Microsoft for people who aren't aware. I felt a lot better when I heard him say that. I'm sure a lot of people did actually. It's kind of validating. I too, my full-time job for more than the past year now has been studying this stuff, and you think you're just starting to get your arms around a chunk of it, and then you learn about, some new thing, and it's like a brand new, like you open one door and it's this whole other labyrinth you have to go into. And I found that the terrain that I was mapping for myself and kind of this program of self-study I had created just started growing and growing faster. And that's if the technology was holding still, right? When it's actually moving just as fast, it becomes a little bit overwhelming. Anyway, glad to hear
yeah, I
that.
mean, that's like great. You're 100% right. I mean, it's like, I'll give you one example, but I can give you 1,000 if you'd like. We just read the paper about liquid AI, and you're like, okay, great. I just got my head around transformers, and now liquid AI comes out. So, look, we have to change our mindset here. Okay, we really do. The old mindset was, I'm going to be a .NET programmer that's going to focus on mobile apps, so I'm going to learn Xamarin. And you spent 5, 6, 7 months heads down learning it, and then you did projects for 2 or 3 years, and you're an expert. And you basically were able to control your destiny. Now you just have to say to yourself, things are moving really, really quickly, and what I have to do is kind of Zen here. It's like, you're standing on top of the wheel. And what do they say in Zen? When the wheel moves faster, you have to run faster. When the wheel moves slower, you run slower. Well, right now the wheel is moving at 100 revolutions per minute. So you're gonna have to run. It's brute force approach.
How are your clients kind of, are they mostly looking for stuff that can be handled with straightforward API, ChatGPT wrapper type applications, or are you having to get more into technology, in terms of like fine tuning, RAG applications, agentic systems, et cetera?
The vast majority of my clients are able to use ChatGPT wrappers, and when we say ChatGPT, I'm sorry, let's just say large language models
Good
or
point.
language
Yeah.
models. Okay, so are able to use language models in general. Look, they're very, very powerful, and they can be applied to almost any part of any aspect of operations. When we do have to fine tune, fine tuning is not all that complicated, as we know, and it's
Yeah.
getting easier and easier. And utilizing RAG techniques, there's a whole study of various RAG techniques, but a lot of those techniques are starting to be baked into the usual suspects, like Pinecone and everything.
Yeah.
So again, this is less of a technological challenge right now and just more of a be aware of everything, and that requires several hours a day, and then understand how to implement it. And that also requires not only a technological perspective, but a business perspective too. I own several businesses. I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I know businesses inside and out, and I know technology inside and out. So that's how I'm able to help my customers the best.
I think it's very helpful. I don't think, with all of the news about larger models, better models, chain of thought, and the new reasoning models, and so it's a lot of people, I think, unless they're actually active in development, don't realize how powerful small models can be, and specifically small models that have been fine-tuned for a specific use case can actually outperform larger models, and they do it much faster and at lower cost because the models are smaller and requiring less power. So it actually makes itself perfect for mobile applications, edge devices, and so on, but also just cheaper inference in general. And secondly, a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to have a PhD in data science to fine tune a large language model. There's tools that you can use at OpenAI and Google and Microsoft and so on. Um, Sometimes I've heard, and in my own experiments and just seeing reasonably good results, literally with as few as 20 good examples and certainly 100. Now, if you have more data than that, absolutely you can use it. So fine tuning, for instance, your own customer service chatbot from your own historical company's data is not like this giant undertaking that's going to take millions of dollars or anything like that. It's actually can be a pretty straightforward project, especially if you have the data. And if you don't have data, you can actually use LLMs to create synthetic data for you, which is just kind of mind blowing when you think about it that it actually works. Anyway, so these options are available. And I think getting the word out to people, like you're saying, almost any business process can be affected by this. I think a lot of people don't know that unless they tend to be very, forward leaning when it comes to technology in general. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if you're a developer, so let's actually springboard off what you said, Greg, because you hit something really important here. If you're a developer and you want to go ahead and show your client or your boss or whatever some of the potentials, but you don't have access to their data, think about what you can do here. What Greg just said. First of all, write yourself a script that will ask a large language model something like, you are a support agent for American Express, and you ask. You deal with people who have their credit card stolen, and I want you to write out 40 questions and responses that you feel that an American Express agent would get. So you have the large language model create that. You ask the large language, in your script, you go ahead and format it in JSON format, specifically that OpenAI wants, and then you can go ahead and just either manually upload or use a script to go ahead and upload that to OpenAI, fine tune a model, and boom, you got a model that you can now show your client or your boss. And you can say, look, I did this with synthetic data. If you can actually give me real transcripts, I will blow your mind.
That's a really good point. Now, and this of course opens up all kinds of doors in the context of open source models. Do you have a particular preference, open source versus closed source, or does it totally depend on the client and the use case?
It absolutely 100% depends on client needs and what their use cases are. However, I have a soft spot for open source for many different
Same
reasons.
here.
First of all, I am 100% in the camp of make it all open and let humans just do what they want with it. I am not a fan of holding back on any of these models. Make them all open source as far as I'm concerned. That's number one. Number two is, as you mentioned, various techniques, whether they be LoRa techniques or any other techniques to make them smaller and smaller, liquid AI, whatever it happens to be. Our models are getting smaller and smaller, which means that it's opening the door for many business opportunities to deploy on device, and which is really, really damn powerful. Not only for privacy, least for privacy, but the fact that you have a dedicated device model that can do one thing. And then now start thinking about if you're able to deploy several different models on device, each with its own niche, and maybe an orchestrator on top of that. You got your own little mini AGI on
That's
your own
what
device, right?
Siri is basically, or new Siri is going to be an orchestrator of many specialist models
Yeah,
and
yeah. That's
AI.
where I think AGI is headed. It's going to be an orchestrator of many models.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's what civilization is, right?
That's right.
An
That's what companies
orchestrator of
are.
many specialized humans.
Yep. So I understand that in your founders workshop, you specialize in early stage projects such as demos for startups and proofs of concept for corporate projects. When things go well and you're like, okay, we got something here, how do you manage the transition into productization and production with respect to, for instance,
Sure.
handing things off to the internal team or ramping up with talent or whatever?
Yeah. So we build proof of concepts. We build mostly MVPs, and we build V1s and sometimes V2s. And around the V2 stage is when we help the company transition to their own team. So what happens is it's an organic and gradual transition. What will happen is around the V1 phase, if they're gaining traction, this is when we help them hire a VP of Dev or CTO for themselves. Then from there, we'll help them hire one or two developers, and they'll slowly phase us out and slowly phase themselves in. We are under no illusions that you're going to need Founders Workshop for your entire business endeavor, but you will for the first few years is when we can get you off the ground. So what we do is number one is we give you the keys to the kingdom on day one. The keys to the server, the keys to the repo, the keys to everything, because we want you to feel 100% secure that unlike other dev shops, which I won't name, who hold you hostage, we will never, ever do that. On day one, you got everything. And if you decide at 12 in the afternoon, you want to leave us for whatever reason, you can just get up and go because you already have access to everything. And then we also make sure to create good documentation for your new developers so that when we do the transition is smooth.
All right, we're getting close to the end here. What excites you most about AI? And are you generally, I can guess here, but are you generally optimistic or pessimistic about an AI-enabled future?
What excites me the most? It, there's so much that excites me right now. I am a huge fan of what's coming out with generative video. I think that's incredible. The ability to create short videos right now is incredible. But just a few years down the line, anybody who's just has a great idea but doesn't have the access to talent or permits for locations and all of that will be able to create movies and TV shows. Yes, they will. If they have are articulate enough and they have the creativity. So I'm excited about that. I think it's wonderful. I'm also really excited about what large language models is doing with humanoid robots. I think that humanoid robotics is in its very beginning phase. It's GPT-1, but it will have its GPT 3.5 moment. And, we are a few short years away from domestic robots. So that's something else I'm really excited about.
I am so right with you on both of those. On the movie making front, I used to write. I wrote screenplays in college, and was never seriously pursuing it as a career. I thought probably the odds of breaking into it were never looked very good, and I didn't want to move to Hollywood and stuff like that. But I have an appreciation for the craft of storytelling, and my wife is a novelist, and I'm her editor, and so we talk about these things. I mean, that's just kitchen table kind of conversation for us. Is the character's main arc and the tension in this scene and that kind of stuff. We kind of nerd out. I've actually lately been looking at this AI writing assistant called Pseudo which is for novelists,
Mhm.
and they really, I think they kind of specialize for writers who are probably less far along on their journey with the craft, let's say, and people who have an idea and they really like they have a novel in them, a story in them, and they just really don't know where to start, and it kind of leads them by the hand in this process. And just I've been looking at the video stuff and thinking, the ability to compose a shot and do just beautiful imagery and the what amounts to art direction, that's coming very quickly. I don't know how soon we'll get to um, not just people that look real, but acting that looks real, like matching up dialogue and voice to lips moving. That's pretty good, but having characters that can emote realistically and kind of transition beyond the uncanny valley, I think that's probably a breakthrough that remains to be done. It'll happen for sure, and probably before we know it. But we haven't, we've seen impressive video clips of faces, but we haven't seen anything I haven't seen anything yet. Maybe there's something out there of very compelling video of like a dramatic scene with actors who can actually really act. And I think that's kind of the next hurdle that needs to be crossed. And then I really don't know when. Again, it's not a matter of if; it's a matter of when the LLMs will be able to be very good at telling stories, especially, something that's new enough to be interesting. Of course, there's no such thing as a new story, they say, but there's a million ways, infinite ways of telling a familiar story. And so I've sort of wondered if pseudo write would be, they're really oriented, or companies like them in the same sort of category. They aim at novelists, but hey, if we're all going to be creating our own movies and our own game line, like storylines and things like that, there is a role still for storytelling. And I wonder how much of that will be driven by the user and creators versus totally AI, and do eventually we get humans out of the mix. And is that good or bad for people? And I don't really know. Do you have an opinion on that?
You know what? It's a damn good question, Greg. And the more AI knows about us, the more. Okay, let's look at two concepts here. The first concept is that we know that AI is advancing at a rate about 10x Moore's law. It is just moving so incredibly fast. What you learn today and are blown away by today is going to seem quaint in a couple of months, really. So it's moving really fast. Number two is once it knows a lot about us, and right now it doesn't, but once it knows a lot about us through our Facebook and our LinkedIn and our emails and our tweets and our text messages and all of that, it's going to be able to just create what we want. And it'll be able to create things that we don't know that we want. And at that point, I don't know, Greg. I really don't know. This is what I mean by it's going to change everything. It's going to change the landscape of how we live life as humans. Now, I know some people listening to that, think, oh no, it really can't. It really can't. But it absolutely is. Fire changed the way that we live as humans. The agricultural revolution 12,000 years ago changed the way we live as humans. Electricity changed the way we live as humans. And AI is going to have a greater impact on all of that because it's going to be able to create and serve in ways that none of us can think about right now.
Well, that sounds like an awesome place to stop it. Um, for people who have something they want to have built and they need it to be built, how can people reach you in Founders Workshop?
Very easy, foundersworkshop.com, and you can follow me on LinkedIn, Vincent Serpico.
And I am Greg Helmstetter, your host. You can reach me at greg@latentspaces.ai. That's spaces plural because there is a latent space out there, but that's not me, that's somebody else. Vincent, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous and a really good conversation. Thank you very much for joining us.
The pleasure. Thank you.